Good Thursday evening to you. For Telesur, I'm Regan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela. Before we begin, a look at this evening's headlines. Protests over a Peruvian mining project continue under police repression and 4 dead. Protesters say the project will contaminate their land. Hondurans hit the street calling for the resignation of the president over corruption scandals. And a 20-year-old man dies after a shootout with police, but not before he kills 13 people at a school. The details on these stories and more now on From the South. Thank you for being here with us. After 5 days of protest action in southern Peru over a mining project, the marches continue in the capital, Lima. At least 4 protesters have been killed so far by security forces in the province of Cotabambas, although some claim the figures could be bigger. Dozens more have been injured. A state of emergency was declared on Tuesday, and residents are demanding a halt to the expansion of the copper mine and justice for those who have been killed. Our correspondent in Peru, Ryle Mora, filed this report.
Funerals are taking place in the south-central Peruvian region of Apurímac after 4 civilians were killed by police officers during protests against alterations made to the original plan of what could become the largest mining project in the country.
The fear that distresses us comes from the contamination because we live off the land, we live off the animals, and we live from the environment. Our products in this area are ecological, and we do not want the mine to contaminate us.
Despite the protests and the civilian deaths, government officials gave a press conference expressing complete support for the actions of the police and armed forces in the area and condemning protesters.
We are not going to allow any type of pseudo-environmentalist leaders of any kind or a reivindication that has hidden political or economic objectives to throw away years of investment.
However, experts say that the concerns of the protesters are reasonable after significant changes were made to the project, such as eliminating a secure transportation system for the minerals and installing 2 additional processing plants near the Chahuahuacho River.
This logic of an illegitimate agenda using the conflict as an excuse is the result of a plot, and is not rigorous, nor serious. It also gives the impression that as a country we're not learning from the long list of conflicts that have taken place in the last years.
Although the government's reaction to the protests is the same as with several other active social conflicts involving extractive industries, in this case, locals do not reject the overall project, but claim they will continue protesting to make their voices heard with regards to the project's implementation. Ryle Mora, Telesur, Peru.
Opposition parties in Honduras and the protest movements went on a national strike this Thursday morning. They seek to pressure the government to stop the political persecution against the opposition and to stop the aggressive privatization measures. The National Resistance Front in Honduras announced the stoppage in coordination with the Libre Party. They called for demonstrations and protests in the country's principal cities and on major highways. Former Haitian President Jean-Bertrand Aristide urged his supporters to vote for the presidential candidate of his Lavalas family party, Maurice Narcisse, on the elections that will take place on October 25th. The twice-deposed leader appeared in front of thousands of his supporters outside his house. It was the first time he's spoken since he returned from exile in 2011. Haiti's first democratically elected president blamed electoral authorities for marred elections earlier this year. His party's peer, Maurice Narcisse, hopes to succeed ruling President Martelly, who cannot run again for election. Aristide also called for Haitians to unite against adversity and to remain rebellious. The Office of Mexico's Attorney General announced on Wednesday the extradition of 13 drug traffickers to the United States. More now with Clayton Kahn.
Yesterday, Mexican security forces carried out a strong operation in the Altiplano prison just outside of Mexico City, with initial rumors swirling that violence or a riot broke out in the facility that saw the escape in July of one of the world's most powerful drug kingpins, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Yet the rumors were quickly quelled after the authorities gave a press conference stating that 13 presumed drug cartel members were being extradited to the United States to face charges there. Now, 2 of the 13 prisoners are well known and considered to be powerful leaders in Mexico's organized crime world. Edgar Valdez Villarreal, known as the Barbie, who was born in Texas, is wanted in the United States for organized crime, homicide, and trafficking. Villarreal was arrested in 2012 and 10 and helped organize the armed wing of El Chapo Guzman's cartel. Now, the other high-profile individual is Jorge Sanchez, known as El Cos, who was the leader of the powerful Gulf cartel before his capture in 2012. He was considered by the FBI as one of the most wanted drug kingpins in Mexico. Now, Mexico had previously balked at U.S. requests to extradite presumed criminals, especially after the country detained El Chapo Guzman in 2014. Yet, after the embarrassing jailbreak in 2015 of El Chapo, Mexico's Attorney General has caved to U.S. pressure. This is Clayton Khan reporting for Telesur here in Mexico City.
And today marks 1 year since the murder of Venezuelan politician Robert Serra. Serra was found at his Caracas home, stabbed to death, along with his female assistant, Maria Herrera, who had also died because of stab wounds. Colombian paramilitaries were linked to the murder of Serra. He was the country's youngest ever parliamentarian and was widely predicted to become one of the top leaders of the ruling Socialist Party.
In honor of the memory of our brother, comrade, young patriot, and deputy of the National Assembly, Robert Serra, I reiterate our promise before the country to construct a revolutionary struggle. Secondly, highlighting his work as a deputy and youth leader that worked always in the construction of a better country.
We continue together our path in love, peace. Only with love and peace can we continue. Hate damages us. I lose my son a year ago, and I can't fill myself with hate. Hate will not fit between us. We are men and women of peace.
Violence continues in El Salvador, which has overtaken Honduras as the country with the world's highest murder rate. A truce between the country's 2 main gangs, the Mara Salvatrucha and the Barrio 18, began to fall apart last year. The country has recorded over 4,200 homicides in the first 8 months of the year, surpassing last year's total figure. This is an average of 17.5 murders per day. According to authorities, 80% of the homicides are related to purges and score settling between the gangs, which are made up of some 60,000 young people. Hurricane Joaquin strengthened into a Category 4 storm as it soared through the lightly populated islands of the eastern Bahamas, and forecasters said it could grow still more intense before following a path that would take it near the U.S. East Coast. There were no immediate reports of casualties as the storm reached the island chain. Joaquin had maximum sustained winds of 210 kilometers per hour and hurricane-strength winds extending 75 kilometers from the eye. Coming up next on From the South, Russia carries out strikes in Syria and says that it is on the same side as the U.S. in the conflict. This story and more next.
The truth behind the power. We lift the lid on some of the world's most ruthless figures. Open file. Only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there. We need to understand the world we live in. We require news with critical points of view, thorough analysis, and social commitment. This information is vital to think, to understand, and to change. The world demands a new perspective. telesurtv.net/English. Wherever the news, you'll be there. An insight into Africa today with Bill Fletcher. The Global African, only on telesurtv.net in English. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
Welcome back. Authorities in Oregon State in the United States are now trying to ascertain the motive for the killing of 13 people at Oregon's Umpqua Community College. The shooter is now dead, and 4 guns found at the scene are thought to have belonged to the shooter. Some 20 others were also injured in the incident that has taken the small community of Roseburg by surprise. The school has always been described as a peaceful and safe atmosphere. Law enforcement are currently investigating the incident. President Barack Obama has blamed Congress's inaction for continued mass shootings in the U.S. And now we go live to Bianca Perez in the United States. Hi, Bianca. Good to speak with you. Could you give us the latest information in connection with this mass shooting in Oregon State?
Hi, Regan. How are you? Yes, the latest we have actually the sheriff of Roseburg County in Oregon, which is where Umpqua College is located, came and spoke. He gave a brief press conference, and he actually confirmed there have been 10 deaths and only 10 injured, although earlier we had heard that there were a lot more injuries. I am not sure where the confusion lies. He didn't specify, but he did confirm 10 deaths and 10 injuries thus far. Also, of course, as you mentioned before, the shooter is now deceased. They still have not released his name. All we know is that it was a male, 20-year-old male. We're not sure if he was a student of the college. They have not released any facts about the shooter just yet. There have been some reports that the shooter made some announcements on social media, so obviously the police know his identity and have been investigating and looking into some of the things that he may have said last night in certain conversations, but they have not given much else about why this happened or what led to this event thus far.
Now, Bianca, I know President Barack Obama has spoken to the press at the White House, and he made a comment stating that the response by the media is now routine. The response by authorities is routine, but the response after incidents like this happens is all routine. And of course, he called again on Congress to respond with stricter gun control regulations. Has there been any reactions thus far from anti-gun control groups?
You're correct. So essentially, President Barack Obama spoke and kind of said that the nation has become used to these types of situations. It is important to note that this is the 15th time this year that he has to make this speech, addressing the nation regarding certain shootings that have occurred, massacres, not only in schools, but also we've had church shootings, shootings in movie theaters. So I think to him, it's getting a little old having to mention this, and that was what he said during his speech, that everyone is kind of getting used to speaking about this topic, but nothing is really being done, and he really called upon Congress for that. As far as anti-gun organizations, some have come out to speak, none of them officially, but as analysts in different media outlets, and they have spoken of action needs to be taken by the Congress. Something needs to be done because it's difficult to think that a nation that claims to be so powerful is still being affected by these things when laws could be put in place to try and solve this issue. So they, of course, stand on the side of President Obama, who's asked for more gun control, and they're hopeful that maybe this shooting, as they have been in the past with every other shooting that we've encountered, will lead to more gun control in the United States.
Bianca, are you able to walk us through exactly how this shooter, who's now dead, got into school through security? And what was the response of teachers and students at school once the shooting had begun?
Right, Regan. Well, it is still somewhat of a mystery. The police has not released all the facts yet. What we do know is that the campuses here, and I'll explain a little bit, in the U.S. are not necessarily closed campuses, so you don't have to walk through a security gate when you go to the university. So this is an open campus. It's essentially a collection of buildings, what makes up this community college. So anybody could have easily walked in to any college campus here, and they don't necessarily have to go through a security gate. At that point is where it becomes unclear whether he was a student or whether he was just an outsider. The shooting occurred in multiple classrooms from what reports have said, but that also has not been verified just yet. So it's still very up in the air and unclear. What I do know is that the security on the campus is not necessarily a security gate. So there's really no way for security to stop someone like that from walking in.
Bianca, thanks so much for the report. We'll touch base with you another time. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Regan.
Moving on now, elsewhere in Oregon, a new state law is allowing the recreational use of marijuana. The law permits adults to smoke privately, grow no more than 4 marijuana plants, be in possession of no more than 8 ounces in their homes, and carry no more than 1 ounce of marijuana around with them outside their homes. The new law is indicative of the general consensus in Oregon, where 53% of the population believes that marijuana should be legalized. And they are without money and without a home. Tens of thousands of refugees from African and Middle Eastern countries filter about Greece, awaiting the chance to travel to other European countries with stronger economies capable of facilitating them. Authorities have been working on a solution to enthuse refugees into Greece by attempting to house them, give them food, and supply them with labor, which will help them become viable additions to the country. Officials are currently trying to convince refugees to temporarily be located to a disused Olympic Games venue north of Athens.
It's complicated. I don't know. I'm happy and sad because away from my family, something like that. It's complicated feelings. But I hope to get what I want to all my family and me.
The problem, we come here but we finished our money. Everyone, you see them, the families, the women, the men, finished their money. They want money.
And Greek Prime Minister took some time at the UN General Assembly to highlight the refugee crisis and to remind the globe's leaders that the world's most powerful countries were built on the arrival and contribution of immigrants.
We needed and still need to struggle step by step to claim a growth rather than an austerity agenda, to protect the most vulnerable members of society and distribute tax burdens justly, to link the development of the economy and the restoration of confidence to the need for a restructuring of our debt.
Moscow has released footage of airstrikes on the Islamic State in Syria in the last 48 hours. The images show strikes in the Homs region of Syria. Russian fighter jets performed 8 missions, allegedly blowing up an Islamic State headquarters and an ammunition depot and car bombs plant. The move follows Russian President Vladimir Putin's UN General Assembly speech in which he called for an alliance against Islamic State. And speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that his country is after the same targets in Syria as the United States. He also said that Moscow did not consider the rebel Free Syrian Army a terrorist group.
If it looks like a terrorist, if it acts like a terrorist, if it walks like a terrorist, if it fights like a terrorist, it's a terrorist, right? I would recall that we always were saying that we are going to fight ISIL and other terrorist groups. This is the same position which the Americans are taking. The representatives of the coalition command have always been saying that their targets are ISIL, al-Nusra and other terrorist groups. This is basically our position as well. We see eye to eye with the coalition on this one.
Also speaking at the UN General Assembly was the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who called for an immediate resumption of peace talks with Palestine. He also attacked the international community over its nuclear deal with Iran.
I am prepared to immediately resume direct peace negotiations with the Palestinian Authority without any preconditions whatsoever.
An agreement on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, known as the TPP, is still elusive as Pacific Rim trade ministers gathered in the U.S. city of Atlanta in the second attempt in 2 months to get an ambitious 12-nation trade deal over the finishing line. The TPP seeks to reduce trade barriers and set common standards among a dozen Pacific Rim nations stretching from Japan to Chile. However, talks have become snared over a small set of issues, including dairy trade and patent periods for biological drugs. Hardened fighters from around the globe head to gyms in Rio de Janeiro to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a mixed martial art form. The sport has become an unlikely success story and is steadily gaining international popularity. People from all over the globe head to Brazil to learn the art form, which is a bit like physical chess. Jiu-Jitsu has become so popular in the Middle East that it's gotten some investment from the United Arab Emirates, which has led to it being included in the 2018 Asian Games.
People outside of Brazil think of Brazil as being like the mecca of jiu-jitsu, like the main hub for the world's training and everything like that. So definitely coming from a Western country where the level isn't so high as it is here, it's definitely more of a reality check coming here. Definitely you get put in your place very, very quickly.
Some see electric cars as the future of urban transport that would not only alleviate traffic in densely populated cities, but would also help to reduce carbon emissions. And Chile has now joined the market with the release of Soki, an electric car which will be made available from March 2016. Creators of the vehicle say that Soki will be able to safely and comfortably seat 2 people and will be able to maneuver through traffic like a motorcycle. However, there are global concerns on whether electric cars really do reduce carbon emissions. Concerns center around how the car's batteries are manufactured and how the electricity which powers them is generated. And finally this evening, not many people know the identity of graffiti artist Banksy, but they do know his work. The elusive guerrilla artist had 11 of his pieces auctioned at Julian's Auctions of Beverly Hills, where he raked in hundreds of thousands in sales. One of his pieces, named Donkey Document, was sold for $190,000. Martin Nolan, the executive director at Julian's Auctions, said that Banksy is one of the most important street artists. He added that graffiti, which had generally been frowned upon years ago, has come a very long way. And there is more on these and other stories on our website, telesurtv.net/English. From our news teams in Quito, Ecuador, and here in Caracas, Venezuela. For Telesur English, I'm Regan Veens. We hope you can join us again tomorrow on From the South. Have a great evening.